The sleek private jet touched down on the runway with a smooth grace that seemed almost otherworldly. Its polished silver exterior gleamed under the bright afternoon sun, catching the light in a way that made it look like something out of a dream, or perhaps a movie scene. Passengers near the large terminal windows couldn't help but stare as the aircraft taxied closer to the building, stopping just close enough to disrupt operations without crossing any official boundaries. Inside the terminal, chaos erupted almost instantly. Ground crew members scrambled outside, shouting into their radios and waving their arms in confusion. Air traffic controllers' voices crackled over loudspeakers, trying to figure out why an unauthorized plane had landed so suddenly. Meanwhile, travelers pressed their faces against the glass, pointing and whispering excitedly about what they were witnessing. Some snapped photos with their phones, while others recorded videos, eager to share the surreal moment on social media. Maya stood calmly by one of the large windows, her arms crossed loosely over her chest. She watched the scene unfold with a small, satisfied smile playing at the corners of her lips. To anyone watching, she appeared completely unfazed by the pandemonium around her. In truth, she was enjoying every second of it. This wasn't just about making a statement. It was about reclaiming control in a situation where she'd been denied even the most basic respect. Behind her, people began murmuring among themselves. "Is that hers?" someone asked quietly, gesturing toward the jet. Another traveler nodded, knowingly. "It has to be. Did you see how they treated her earlier? No wonder she's doing this." The comments rippled through the crowd like waves, each one carrying a mix of admiration, disbelief, and curiosity. Maya ignored the chatter for now, focusing instead on the task at hand. She pulled out her phone again and dialed a familiar number. After 2 rings, Kevin answered. "Hey, everything's set," he said cheerfully. "We're ready whenever you are." "Perfect," Maya replied, her voice steady and composed. "I'll be there in 5 minutes. Make sure Marcus knows we're heading straight to New York after takeoff." "You got it," Kevin confirmed. "Anything else?" "No, that's all for now. Thanks." With that, Maya ended the call and slipped her phone back into her pocket. She glanced around once more, taking in the wide-eyed expressions of the passengers still gawking at the jet. For a brief moment, she allowed herself to savor the irony of the situation. Just moments ago, she'd been standing at Gate 23, being told she couldn't board a commercial flight because of some vague technical issue. Now here she was, proving that she didn't need permission from anyone to fly wherever she pleased. Satisfied, Maya turned away from the window and began walking toward the exit. As she moved, she noticed Ryan, the young agent who'd initially handled her case, watching her from behind the counter. His face was pale, his eyes wide with shock. Beside him, Linda looked equally stunned, though she tried to mask it with a forced expression of professionalism. Neither of them said a word as Maya passed by, but their silence spoke volumes. Outside, the air was warm and slightly humid, carrying the faint scent of jet fuel mixed with freshly cut grass. Maya walked briskly across the tarmac, her heels clicking rhythmically against the pavement. Waiting for her near the base of the stairs leading up to the jet were 2 figures: Samantha, her personal security detail, and Marcus, her pilot. Both wore crisp uniforms that matched the jet's polished aesthetic, exuding an aura of competence and authority. "Welcome back, Miss Carter," Marcus greeted her warmly, tipping his cap slightly. "Everything go smoothly inside?" "As smoothly as could be expected," Maya replied dryly, raising an eyebrow. "Let's just say I won't be recommending their services anytime soon." Samantha chuckled softly. "Well, if nothing else, they'll definitely remember you." "That's the idea," Maya said with a wry smile. Without another word, she ascended the stairs and stepped onto the luxurious interior of the jet. Inside, plush leather seats lined the cabin, accompanied by sleek wooden accents and state-of-the-art technology. It was a far cry from the cramped economy section of a commercial flight, and exactly what Maya deserved. As she settled into one of the seats, she noticed reporters gathering near the fence surrounding the tarmac. Cameras flashed and microphones were thrust into the air as journalists shouted questions. "Ms. Carter, why did you leave your commercial flight?" one called out. Another yelled, "What message are you sending to the airline?" Maya leaned, back in her seat, considering whether to address them directly. Normally, she preferred to avoid unnecessary drama, but today felt different. Today, she wanted the world to hear her story. Not just hers, but the stories of countless others who faced similar injustices daily. So, when Samantha suggested stepping outside briefly to speak to the press, Maya agreed. Stepping back onto the tarmac, Maya positioned herself at the top of the stairs, ensuring she remained visible to both the reporters and the growing crowd of onlookers. She took a deep breath, letting the weight of the moment settle over her before speaking. "I'm not here to beg for respect," she began, her voice clear and confident despite the noise around her. "I've worked hard to build my success, and I refuse to let anyone diminish that. What happened today isn't unique. It's part of a pattern that many Black travelers experience regularly. Whether it's questioning our credentials, doubting our reservations, or outright denying a service, these actions aren't isolated incidents. They're symptoms of a larger problem." Her words resonated deeply, especially among the Black travelers in the audience, who nodded in agreement. A few clapped softly, their applause drowned out by the clicking of cameras and the buzz of conversation. Maya paused, letting her message sink in before continuing. "This isn't about revenge or proving a point," she added. "It's about reminding ourselves and everyone else that we deserve better than what we're often given, and sometimes showing people that means taking matters into our own hands." With that, Maya turned and re-entered the jet, leaving behind a sea of astonished faces. Reporters scribbled notes furiously, capturing every detail of her impromptu speech. Social media lit up almost immediately, with hashtags like "Tinkwun Fly with Dignity" and "Respect for All" trending within minutes. Back inside the terminal, Linda and Ryan exchanged uneasy glances, realizing too late that they'd underestimated the woman they'd dismissed so casually. As the jet prepared for takeoff, Maya sat back in her seat, feeling a mix of emotions. On one hand, she felt vindicated, like she'd finally taken a stand in a way that couldn't be ignored. On the other hand, she knew this was only the beginning. Real change wouldn't come overnight, and there would undoubtedly be more battles to fight. But for now, she allowed herself a moment of quiet triumph. Through the window, she watched as the ground crew scrambled to regain order, their movements frantic and disorganized. The sight brought a small smile to her face, a reminder that sometimes disrupting the status quo was the best way to demand attention. As the engines roared to life and the jet lifted off the runway, Maya leaned back in her seat, closing her eyes for just a moment. Today had been a victory, not just for her, but for everyone who believed in fairness and equality. And as the Itibwa city skyline faded into the distance below, Maya knew this was only the start of something much bigger. The morning sun filtered through the large glass windows of Atlanta International Airport, casting warm golden light over the bustling terminal. Travelers hurried along with their suitcases, some clutching coffee cups while others scrolled on their phones. Among them was Maya Carter, a tall woman with smooth dark skin and an air of quiet confidence. She wore a tailored navy blue blazer, black slacks and low heels that clicked softly against the tiled floor as she made her way to Gate 23. Maya had been traveling for years, first as a student, then as a young professional, and now as one of the most successful businesswomen in her field. Her work often required her to fly across the country, sometimes even internationally. This trip, however, was supposed to be simple, just a short flight from Atlanta to New York for a meeting with potential investors. Nothing out of the ordinary. But something about today felt different, though she couldn't quite put her finger on it. As she approached the gate, Maya noticed the usual commotion: families saying tearful goodbyes, solo travelers typing furiously on laptops, and children chasing each other around chairs. Yet there was also tension in the air, a subtle undercurrent she'd learned to recognize over time. It wasn't loud or obvious, but it lingered nonetheless. A reminder of how unpredictable airports could be. She stopped at the counter to check, in pulling out her boarding pass and ID. The agent behind the desk was a young man named Ryan, barely in his 20s, with messy blonde hair and a nervous smile. He glanced at her documents before punching information into his computer. For a moment, everything seemed normal. Then he paused, frowned, and leaned closer to the screen. I'm sorry, Miss Carter, Ryan said hesitantly, his voice barely audible above the hum of conversations around them. It looks like there's an issue with your reservation. Maya raised an eyebrow, surprised but not yet alarmed. What kind of issue? She asked politely, keeping her tone calm despite the flicker of irritation rising within her. These kinds of delays weren't uncommon, especially when flying commercial. Still, they were always inconvenient. Ryan hesitated again, glancing toward his supervisor, Linda, who stood nearby chatting with another employee. Sensing his uncertainty, Linda stepped forward, her sharp features framed by tightly pinned back hair. She introduced herself briskly and took control of the situation, scanning the monitor over Ryan's shoulder. I'm afraid there's been a technical error, Linda explained, though her expression suggested otherwise. Your ticket doesn't appear to match our records. We'll need to verify this before we can let you board. Maya blinked, taken aback. That's impossible, she replied firmly. I booked this flight weeks ago. Everything is confirmed. I received my e-ticket and all the confirmation emails. To prove her point, she pulled out her phone and opened the airline app, showing both her digital boarding pass and the email chain documenting her purchase. Linda studied the screen briefly, then shook her head. I understand. But our system isn't recognizing this information. It happens sometimes. Unfortunately, until we resolve this discrepancy, we can't allow you to proceed. Her words hung in the air like a challenge. Maya stared at her, searching for any hint of sincerity. Instead, she found only thinly veiled dismissal. Over the years, Maya had grown accustomed to moments like these, moments where people doubted her competence or questioned her right to occupy spaces meant for everyone. As a black woman navigating predominantly white institutions, she knew all too well what lay beneath such interactions. Still, she refused to let frustration get the better of her. Taking a deep breath, she tried again. Look, I don't have time for this. My flight leaves in 20 minutes. Can you please escalate this issue or find someone who can help me? Linda pursed her lips, clearly annoyed by Maya's persistence. We're doing everything we can, she insisted, her tone clipped. But without proper verification, I'm afraid there's nothing more we can do. By now, a small crowd had gathered, curious bystanders drawn in by the growing tension. Some watched sympathetically, nodding along as if they understood exactly what was happening here. Others simply observed silently, unsure whether to intervene or stay out of it. One older gentleman muttered under his breath, "This wouldn't happen if she were white," earning him a sharp look from a nearby passenger. Maya ignored the murmurs, focusing instead on maintaining her composure. She considered calling her lawyer. She'd done so countless times before, but decided against it. There would be plenty of time for legal action later. Right now, she needed to focus on getting to New York. Well, thank you for your assistance, Maya said finally, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Without waiting for a response, she turned and walked away from the counter, her jaw clenched tight. She could feel eyes following her every move, judging her reaction, speculating about what might happen next. Once she reached a quieter corner of the terminal, Maya pulled out her phone and dialed a number she knew by heart. On the second ring, a cheerful voice answered. Hey Maya, what's up? Kevin, I need you to prep the jet, Maya said bluntly, cutting straight to the chase. Something's come up and I'm not taking no for an answer this time. Kevin's tone shifted instantly, becoming serious. Of course. Where are you headed? New York. Same plan as before. Just make sure everything's ready to go. I got it, Kevin replied. Anything else you need? No, that's all for now. Thanks. Maya ended the call and slipped her phone back into her pocket. A small smile tugged at the corners of her lips as she imagined the look on Linda's face when she realized just how wrong she'd been. Sometimes teaching people a lesson required patience, and sometimes it required a little showmanship. 10 minutes passed quickly, during which Maya sipped on a cup of tea she'd picked up from a nearby cafe. She kept an eye on the gate area, watching as passengers began boarding their flight. Sure enough, chaos erupted outside Terminal B shortly after. People rushed to the windows, craning their necks to see what was causing the commotion. Through the glass, they spotted a sleek private jet descending gracefully onto the runway below. The sight sent ripples of excitement through the crowd. Whispers spread like wildfire as onlookers marveled at the unexpected arrival. Ground crew scrambled to manage the disruption, shouting orders into radios while ground vehicles screeched to a halt. Inside the terminal, the mood shifted dramatically. Passengers abandoned their conversations to gawk at the spectacle unfolding outside. Maya stood calmly by the window, observing the scene with quiet satisfaction. She didn't say a word, didn't need to. Everyone around her already understood what was happening, and why. When she finally turned and walked toward the exit, leaving behind murmurs of disbelief and speculation, she did so with her head held high. Today, she reminded herself, she wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for everyone who deserved better than what the world so often offered. The flight to New York was smooth and quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos Maya had left behind at the Atlanta airport. Inside the private jet, the hum of the engines was soothing, blending with the soft ambient music playing through the cabin's speakers. Maya sat in one of the plush leather seats, her legs crossed and her hands resting lightly on her lap. Though she appeared calm on the surface, her mind was racing, replaying the events of the day over and over again. Samantha, her security detail, sat across from her, scrolling through her phone while occasionally glancing up to check on Maya. Marcus, the pilot, remained focused in the cockpit, ensuring the flight stayed on course. The three of them had worked together for years, and their mochi was evident in the way they moved and communicated without needing many words. Still, Samantha could sense that Maya was deep in thought, so she decided to break the silence. "You handled that beautifully back there," Samantha said, her tone warm but respectful. "I don't think anyone will forget what happened today. Anytime soon." Maya smiled faintly, though her expression remained serious. "Thank you," she replied. "But it shouldn't have to come to this, you know? I shouldn't have to land my own jet just to prove a point. It's exhausting, constantly having to fight for basic respect." Samantha nodded, understanding exactly what Maya meant. "It's not fair," she agreed, "but you're showing people that they can't keep treating us this way. That's powerful." Maya sighed, leaning back in her seat. "I hope so. But sometimes I wonder if anything will really change. People see moments like this. They tweet about it. They talk about it for a few days. But then life goes on, and nothing actually improves." Her voice carried a hint of frustration, but also a deep sadness. She wasn't just speaking about herself. She was thinking about all the others who didn't have the resources or platform to push back against injustice. For every Maya Carter, there were countless others whose voices went unheard, whose stories were ignored. Samantha hesitated before responding. "Change doesn't happen overnight," she said gently. "But every time someone stands up, even if it's just one person, it chips away at the system. You're making people uncomfortable, and that's how progress starts." Maya nodded slowly, appreciating the sentiment, even as doubt lingered in her mind. "Maybe you're right," she admitted. "But it still feels like such a heavy burden sometimes." Before Samantha could respond, Kevin called from the front of the plane. He'd been monitoring social media and news outlets on his laptop, keeping track of the growing buzz surrounding Maya's actions. "You're blowing up online," he announced, turning around to face her. "People are calling you a hero. There's already talk about protests outside the airline's headquarters." Maya raised an eyebrow, surprised by the speed at which the story had spread. "That's unexpected," she said, leaning forward slightly. "What are they saying?" Kevin grinned, clearly impressed. "Mostly good stuff. People are sharing their own experiences of discrimination at airports. Some are tagging the airline, demanding answers. And get this, one influencer posted a video saying she's canceling her membership with them because of what happened to you." Maya let out a small laugh, shaking her head in disbelief. "Wow, I didn't realize it would blow up like this." "It's not just about you," Kevin added. "People see themselves in your story. They're using it as a chance to speak out about their own struggles. For the first time since the incident, Maya felt a flicker of hope. Maybe Samantha was right. Maybe this moment could spark something bigger than she'd imagined. Still, she knew that real change required more than just awareness. It required action. As the plane began its descent into New York, Maya turned her attention to the next steps. She pulled out her phone and opened her notes app, jotting down ideas for how to address the issue systematically. She wanted to go beyond just calling out the airline. She wanted to create lasting solutions that would benefit everyone affected by similar biases. By the time the jet touched down at Teterboro Airport, a smaller facility often used for private flights, the news cycle was in full swing. Reporters had gathered outside, eager to catch a glimpse of Maya as she disembarked. Cameras flashed, and microphones were thrust into the air as she stepped onto the tarmac. This time, however, Maya was prepared. She walked confidently toward the crowd, flanked by Samantha and Kevin. When she reached the designated spot, she paused, taking a moment to compose herself before addressing the reporters. Her voice was steady and clear, cutting through the noise around her. "What happened? Today isn't unique," she began, echoing the words she'd spoken earlier. "It's part of a pattern of systemic bias that affects Black travelers, and people of color in general, every single day. Whether it's being questioned at check-in, profiled during security screenings, or outright denied service, these aren't isolated incidents. They're symptoms of a much larger problem." She paused, letting her words sink in before continuing. "I'm fortunate enough to have the means to take matters into my own hands, but most people don't have that luxury. So instead of focusing solely on me, I want to use this moment to shine a light on the bigger picture. We need accountability. We need transparency. And most importantly, we need change." The reporters scribbled furiously, capturing every word. Questions flew at her from all directions, but Maya held up a hand, signaling that she wasn't done yet. "To that end," she continued, "I'll be announcing some initiatives in the coming days aimed at combating racial bias in the travel industry. These won't just be empty promises. They'll be concrete actions designed to make a difference. Stay tuned." With that, she turned and walked away, leaving the reporters scrambling to piece together the details of her statement. Back in the car, en route to Manhattan, Maya felt a mix of emotions swirling inside her. On one hand, she was proud of herself for standing firm and refusing to back down. On the other hand, she knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Change never was. Kevin broke the silence as they drove through the city streets. "So, what's the plan?" he asked, his tone curious, but professional. "You mentioned initiatives. Any specifics yet?" Maya nodded, pulling out her phone once more. "I've been thinking about starting a foundation," she explained. "Something focused on addressing racial bias in aviation and hospitality. Scholarships for minority students pursuing careers in these fields, legal resources for victims of discrimination, maybe even partnerships with tech companies to develop tools that detect biased practices in booking systems." Kevin's eyes widened in excitement. "That's huge. Do you have anyone in mind to help with it?" "Actually, yes," Maya replied, scrolling through her contacts. "Lisa Nguyen. She's a tech entrepreneur I met at a conference last year. If anyone can figure out how to build AI that detects discriminatory patterns, it's her." Kevin smiled, impressed by her foresight. "She'd be perfect. Want me to reach out?" "Please," Maya said, handing him her phone. "And start drafting a press release while you're at it. We'll hold a formal announcement tomorrow morning." As the car pulled up to her penthouse in Midtown, Maya felt a renewed sense of purpose. The day had been long and emotionally draining, but she knew she was onto something important. For every obstacle she faced, there was always a way to rise above it, and sometimes that meant landing your own plane right where it counted. The next morning, Maya woke up early, the city skyline glowing softly through the floor-to-ceiling windows of her Manhattan penthouse. The sun was just beginning to rise, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. She stood by the window, for a moment, sipping a cup of coffee and reflecting on the whirlwind of events from the previous day. It felt surreal to think that less than 24 hours ago, She had been standing at Gate 23 in Atlanta, being denied boarding. Now, her story was everywhere, on social media, news outlets, and even late-night talk shows. Maya knew the momentum wouldn't last forever. Public attention was fleeting, and if she wanted to make real change, she needed to act quickly. With that thought in mind, she set her coffee down and headed to her home office, where Kevin and Samantha were already waiting. Papers were spread across the desk, along with a laptop displaying drafts of the press release and emails from potential collaborators. "Good morning," Maya said as she entered the room, her voice calm but determined. "How are we looking?" Kevin looked up from his notes and gave her a thumbs up. "We're good to go. The press release is polished, and I've reached out to Lisa Nguyen about partnering on the AI tools. She's interested and wants to meet later today." "That's great," Maya replied, nodding approvingly. "What about the scholarships? Any leads there?" Samantha spoke up, holding up a folder. "I contacted a few universities with strong aviation programs. They're eager to work with us. One dean even suggested hosting a panel discussion to kick things off." Maya smiled, feeling a surge of optimism. "Perfect. We'll need to move fast, though. Once the press conference is over, everyone will expect action, and we can't afford to disappoint." The three of them spent the next hour finalizing the details. By the time they were done, everything was in place. The foundation would be called Skyward Initiative, a name chosen to symbolize upward mobility and breaking barriers. Its mission statement was clear: to combat racial bias in travel and hospitality industries, and its goals were ambitious yet achievable. Scholarships, legal resources, and tech partnerships were only the beginning. By mid-morning, Maya stepped into a sleek conference room at a hotel in Midtown, ready to face the cameras once again. Reporters filled the room, their notebooks open, and recorders at the ready. Some were familiar faces from the day before, while others were new arrivals eager to cover the unfolding story. As Maya took her seat at the podium, the room fell silent, all eyes fixed on her. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice steady and commanding. "Yesterday, many of you asked me what message I hope to send with my actions. Today, I'm here to answer that question, not just with words but with action." She paused, letting the weight of her statement settle over the room. Then she continued, explaining the vision behind Skyward Initiative. She talked about the systemic biases that Black travelers faced daily, citing statistics and personal anecdotes to drive her point home. Her tone was passionate but measured, striking a balance between emotion and professionalism. "When I was denied boarding yesterday," she said, "it wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a pattern that tells people like me that we don't belong, that our presence is somehow questionable or unwelcome. But I refuse to accept that narrative, and neither should anyone else." Her words resonated deeply, especially among the reporters who had followed her story closely. A young journalist raised her hand hesitantly, and Maya nodded for her to speak. "What makes you think this initiative will succeed where others have failed?" the reporter asked, her question tinged with skepticism. Maya didn't hesitate. "Because it's not just about raising awareness. It's about creating tangible solutions. Scholarships will open doors for minority students who might otherwise be shut out. Legal resources will empower victims of discrimination to fight back, and technology will help identify and eliminate biased practices in booking systems. These aren't empty promises. They're actionable steps designed to create lasting change." The room erupted into murmurs of approval, and several reporters scribbled furiously in their notebooks. Another journalist chimed in, asking about potential challenges. "Do you worry about pushback from airlines or industry leaders?" "Yes," Maya admitted honestly. "There will always be resistance when you challenge the status quo. But silence isn't an option. If we want a fairer, more inclusive world, we have to start somewhere. And I believe this is the right place to begin." Her candor earned her applause, and the rest of the press conference unfolded smoothly. By the end, reporters were lining up to ask follow-up questions, and Maya patiently answered each one. When the event finally wrapped up, she stepped outside to find an even larger crowd gathered than before. Supporters held signs reading, nor fly with dignity and respect for all, cheering as she walked past. Back at her penthouse, Maya allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. She sat on the couch scrolling through social media posts and articles about the press conference. The response had been overwhelmingly positive, with hashtags related to Skyward Initiative trending nationwide. Influencers, activists, and even politicians were praising her efforts, vowing to support the cause in any way they could. But amid the praise, there were also critics. Some accused her of using the incident as a publicity stunt, while others dismissed the foundation as a temporary fix to a much deeper problem. Maya read their comments without reacting, knowing that criticism came with the territory. Still, it stung a little, reminding her of how often Black women were scrutinized no matter what they did. Just as she was about to put her phone down, it buzzed with an incoming call. It was Lisa Nguyen, the tech entrepreneur Maya had mentioned earlier. "Hey Maya," Lisa greeted her warmly. "I saw your press conference. Amazing job." "Thanks, Lisa," Maya replied, smiling faintly. "I really appreciate your willingness to help. How soon can we get started?" "We can meet tomorrow," Lisa said enthusiastically. "I've already assembled a team to brainstorm ideas for the AI tool. If everything goes smoothly, we could have a prototype within a few months." "That's incredible," Maya said, genuinely impressed. "Let's make it happen." After hanging up, Maya leaned back on the couch, closing her eyes for a moment. Despite the long day, she felt energized, driven by the knowledge that she was making progress. But she also knew the journey ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be setbacks, obstacles, and moments of doubt. Yet every step forward mattered, no matter how small. That evening, as the city lights sparkled outside her window, Maya joined Samantha and Kevin for dinner in the dining area. The conversation turned to the future of Skyward Initiative, and the trio discussed strategies for expanding its reach. They talked about collaborating with advocacy groups, lobbying lawmakers, and even organizing community events to keep the conversation going. "You're doing something really special here," Kevin said, raising his glass in a toast. "Not just for yourself, but for everyone who's ever felt unseen or unheard." Maya smiled, touched by his words. "It's bigger than me," she agreed. "And I know I can't do it alone. That's why I'm so grateful to have people like you two by my side." As the night wore on, the discussion shifted to lighter topics and the tension of the past few days began to ease. For the first time in a while, Maya allowed herself to relax, savoring the camaraderie and shared purpose that came with working toward something meaningful. Later, as she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Maya thought about the road ahead. The challenges would be immense and the victories might feel few and far between. But she reminded herself of why she'd started this journey in the first place. Not just to reclaim her dignity, but to ensure that others wouldn't have to endure the same struggles she had. And with that thought, she drifted off to sleep, ready to face whatever came next. The weeks following the launch of Skyward Initiative were a whirlwind of activity. Maya found herself juggling meetings, interviews, and planning sessions, all while keeping up with her regular business commitments. Despite the hectic schedule, she felt a deep sense of purpose driving her forward. Every email sent, every phone call made, and every partnership formed brought her one step closer to creating real change. One crisp autumn morning, Maya arrived at a conference center in downtown New York for the first official event hosted by Skyward Initiative. The venue was bustling with attendees, students, industry professionals, activists, and journalists, all eager to learn more about the foundation's goals. Posters featuring the initiative's logo hung on the walls, alongside quotes from Maya's press conference that had resonated widely. "Change starts when we refuse to stay silent." As she stepped onto the stage to deliver the opening remarks, Maya took a moment to scan the room. The diversity among the crowd filled her with hope. Young faces sat alongside seasoned veterans of the aviation and hospitality industries, united by a shared desire for progress. She adjusted the microphone and began speaking, her voice steady and warm. "Thank you all for being here today," she said, smiling as applause rippled through the audience. "This isn't just my story, it's our story. It's the story of everyone who has ever been told they don't belong, who has faced discrimination because of the color of their skin or the texture of their hair. And it's the story of what happens when we decide enough is enough. Her words struck a chord, and the room fell silent as she continued. She spoke about the challenges ahead, acknowledging that systemic bias wouldn't disappear overnight. But she also emphasized the importance of persistence, urging everyone present to play their part in creating a fairer future. After her speech, Maya introduced Lisa Nguyen, who took the stage to discuss the AI tool her team was developing. Using clear, accessible language, Lisa explained how the technology would analyze booking patterns and flag potential instances of bias. For example, if certain names or demographics consistently received fewer seat assignments or higher prices, the system would alert administrators to investigate further. It's not about blaming anyone, Lisa clarified. It's about identifying problems so we can fix them. Data doesn't lie, and this tool will give us the evidence we need to push for meaningful reforms. The audience erupted into applause, clearly impressed by the innovative approach. When Lisa finished, several students approached her during the break, asking thoughtful questions about how they could contribute to the project. Maya watched from a distance, feeling proud of the connections being forged. Later that afternoon, Maya moderated a panel discussion featuring leaders from various sectors: education, law, technology, and advocacy. Each speaker shared their perspective on combating racial bias, offering practical advice for individuals and organizations alike. One participant, a retired airline executive named Charles, admitted that he had once turned a blind eye to discriminatory practices within his company. His honesty earned him both criticism and praise, but it sparked an important conversation about accountability and growth. As the day drew to a close, Maya stood at the podium once more to deliver closing remarks. Her tone was reflective yet optimistic. "Today marks the beginning of something bigger than any one of us," she said. "It's a reminder that when we come together, we can achieve incredible things. Let's keep pushing forward, not just for ourselves, but for those who will follow in our footsteps." The event ended with a standing ovation, and Maya spent the next hour mingling with attendees, answering questions, and thanking supporters. By the time she returned home, exhaustion weighed heavily on her shoulders, but so did a renewed sense of determination. Over the next few months, Skyward Initiative gained significant traction. Universities partnered with the foundation to establish scholarships for minority students pursuing careers in aviation and hospitality. Legal clinics opened across major cities, providing free consultations to victims of discrimination. Meanwhile, Lisa's team worked tirelessly to refine the AI tool, conducting pilot tests with several airlines and travel agencies. Despite the successes, challenges remained. Some companies resisted participating in the program, citing concerns about cost or reputational risk. Others dismissed the initiative altogether, claiming it was unnecessary or overly political. Maya faced these obstacles head-on, leveraging her platform to call out bad actors and rally public support. Social media campaigns targeting resistant organizations often led to swift changes in policy, proving the power of collective action. Through it all, Maya leaned on her team for support. Samantha accompanied her to high-stakes meetings, ensuring her safety and helping manage logistics. Kevin handled communications, crafting messages that balanced professionalism with authenticity. Even Marcus, her pilot, joined the effort by sharing stories of his own experiences with bias in the aviation industry. One evening, as winter settled over New York, Maya hosted a small dinner party at her penthouse to celebrate the foundation's milestones. Guests included collaborators like Lisa, university representatives, and a few close friends. Over plates of gourmet food and glasses of wine, the conversation turned to the future. "What's next for Skyward Initiative?" Lisa asked curiously, leaning back in her chair. "You've accomplished so much already. Where do you see it going?" Maya thought for a moment before responding. "We're just getting started," she said with a smile. "Next year I want to expand internationally. Bias isn't limited to the US after all. We'll also focus on training programs for employees in the travel industry, teaching them how to recognize and address discriminatory behavior. And maybe someday, we'll have our own fleet of planes, fully inclusive, accessible, and designed to set a new standard for air travel. Her vision drew murmurs of excitement from the group, and Lisa raised her glass in a toast. To Maya and Skyward Initiative, she declared, here's to breaking barriers and building bridges. The rest of the night passed in laughter and camaraderie, a well-deserved break from the relentless pace of recent months. As guests began to leave, Maya walked each of them to the door, expressing her gratitude for their contributions. When the last person departed, she returned to the living room and sank onto the couch, staring out at the glittering cityscape beyond her windows. For a long time, she simply sat there, letting the quiet envelop her. The journey hadn't been easy, and it wasn't over yet. But looking back at how far she'd come from that fateful morning at Gate 23 to this moment of triumph, she felt a profound sense of fulfillment. She had taken a stand, and in doing so, she had inspired others to do the same. As she finally drifted off to sleep, Maya dreamed of skies without limits, where everyone could soar freely, unburdened by prejudice or fear. And though she knew there would always be storms to weather, she also knew that every sunrise brought the promise of a brighter tomorrow.